started on a youth training scheme 2 weeks after I left school. And that was a sheet metal worker down near where I live. And just got out mug jobs. Give us this, give us that, go for this, go for that. It's like that all the time. So I jetted that in after 4 months.
The course I was on was just a waste of time. That might not be true of all areas, but there was about 5 people left, you know, during the 2 weeks that I was there. So I can't be the only one with that opinion.
Well over 100,000 school leavers have decided to ignore the government's new youth training scheme and to stay on the dole instead. Some say the money isn't good enough. Some say the scheme's a waste of time. Many believe it's an inadequate response to mass unemployment, especially amongst the young. Are they right? Is the youth training scheme just another dead-end option?
The Youth Training Scheme, or YTS, was launched in 1983. In the words of the Manpower Services Commission, the organisation that runs the YTS, it gives a year of training and work experience that aims to provide a bridge between school and work. In other words, it's a scheme to help you make that transition from the world of teachers and homework to the world of pay packets and dole handouts. The government launched YTS as a replacement for YOP, the Youth Opportunities Programme. YOP came in for a great deal of flack. According to its critics, it failed to give young people any skills, and instead of offering them a valuable opportunity of work experience, it exploited them as cheap labour. Could the same be said of the YTS?
The two schemes are very different, in fact. The YOP, the Youth Opportunities Programme, was really a programme of 6 months work experience, which is just what it says. The opportunity to try a job out in the absence of other jobs, maybe. What we're on about now with the Youth Training Scheme, as its name implies, is a good, sound-based training scheme. So first of all, I think we'd say this is a very different, very new scheme compared to the old one, which was in place for 5 years. And I think should be judged on its own merits without harking back the whole time to what may or may not have happened under YOP.
Also work the hair under, as you put it, so you're not...
YTS offers a whole range of schemes to choose from. There's everything from hairdressing to agriculture, and the idea is that many of the skills should be transferable. For example, skills learned in an insurance office would be valuable in many other areas, and trainees find the YTS experience gives them more confidence about life in general. But it's not all a bed of roses.
The major problem is that it's training for an unspecified future. It's not directly linked to a job. It's also based on cheap labour. Its aim is to reduce the wages that are paid to young people in industry, and then when young people actually go onto the job market, they may in fact displace people who have been in jobs for years.
There are two types of youth training scheme, those that are generally described as employer-based or Mode A schemes, and those that are generally described as community-based or Mode B schemes. The vast majority of trainees, currently about 200,000, join employer-based courses. Stuart Wrightson, a firm of insurance brokers in the City of London, run a training scheme for about 40 young people. Donna Reed was on Stuart Wrightson's first training scheme in 1983. Before she came to work in the City of London, she'd been an apprentice hairdresser. So why did she decide to leave hairdressing and join the youth training scheme?
To be totally honest, the money. The money was really bad in hairdressing, and I wanted to get experience in something where I could earn a lot more. I never ever believed I'd work in an office, ever. I was totally against it. I thought, oh, I'm not going to work in an office, but it's good.
We had a top management. Sometimes it was one person telling everybody else what to do.
Companies running Mode A training schemes are paid by the Manpower Services Commission to take on young people for a year. In return, they're supposed to offer the trainees a combination of work experience and off-the-job training.
The MSc called for us to provide 13 weeks of off-job training, and the rest of the time we are expected to provide work experience in a variety of jobs, not necessarily in a variety of positions, but a variety of jobs throughout the course of the year. to a certain degree, we're allowed to alter or make our own arrangements for how we cover that. In some of our regional offices, of course, we send our trainees out to colleges of further education. But generally, as a company policy, we prefer to do our off-job training within the organisation.
Today, the only youngsters Stuart Wrightson recruit are taken on through the youth training scheme. But what do these trainees learn?
Well, basically, working conditions in an office and how to communicate to people and work as a team with other people in the office.
Has that been an important thing for you to learn, do you think?
Yes, it has really, because you don't know anything about working with other people. When you're at school, you do your work. But when you come into office, it's a totally different environment and you have to learn to work with people and to communicate with them.
I'm learning new things all the time. I'm always being told new things. On the job, in training, it's the same sort of thing every week, but every day on the off-the-job training, it's different.
But Stuart Wrightson isn't a charity. It exists to make money for its shareholders. So what's in the training scheme for the company?
From a company point of view, it does give us a time in which we can observe the young person in a work context. So any selection decisions that we make are likely to be much better informed than they would be on the basis of just half an hour, or even 2 hours interviews and a few school records and so on. So from our point of view, it enhances the whole way in which we go about selecting young people for work.
You'll find most community-based schemes in areas where the local economy is badly run down. Places like Lambeth in South London, where there are very few companies to run employer-based schemes. Some people think a place on a community-based scheme is second best, but many see it differently.
What exactly are you doing here at the workshop?
Well, I'm doing a course in motor mechanics, catering and spraying. 15-week courses.
That's a strange sort of combination of three.
Yeah, well, I only done it because I didn't have a job to go to, and I wanted to go back to college, but I left it too late, so my dad got me that.
So what's the long-term aim?
Well, hopefully to learn about motor mechanics, so that, you know, in the future, if I do really enjoy it, I might get a trade in it.
You think it's a good idea there's actually three different subjects. Can you tell us why?
Yeah, because I'm a person that I want to do mechanics, you see, and I might not be successful in doing that. So since I've done a little bit of welding and light engineering, I've got experience of all three things now. Hopefully, if I do get mechanics right, that'll be okay. But if I don't, well, I've got something to fall back on. I can still say I've had the experience of welding and light engineering.
What exactly do you do here at the training workshop?
Work in the canteen, cooking and doing breakfast and stuff.
Now, I know everybody here gets a choice to do three different subjects. Are you doing three different subjects?
No, only one.
Why is that?
Because there's office practice for girls, but apart from that, there's only catering and office practice for girls.
You could do car mechanic work as well. Why don't you choose to do one of those?
Nah, today.
So what's your long-term ambition then?
To work in a hotel, doing cooking in the hotel part.
And do you think this will be valuable to you?
Yeah, sort of similar work.
What we intend to do here is, in fact, give the trainee broad-based training, which would mean at the end of the year, our trainee would be able to offer an employer any one of three different skills. For example, if a trainee were to do with us engineering, motor mechanics and welding, his main or her main choice may be engineering. That would be the one they'd be most deeply interested in. But if we couldn't get them a job, or they couldn't get themselves a job as an engineer, they'd also be able to offer an employer motor mechanics or whatever else. They'd be able to offer three completely different choices. We don't have to meet the demand of the public, if it be a shop or an industrial organisation. What we will do in our 15 weeks is try and train that particular trainee to the highest possible level in a 15-week course, which would mean, with us, he or she will use machinery and equipment which under normal circumstances in industry they wouldn't be allowed to touch until they've been there for a year or maybe 2 years.
Are you actually doing that option of three courses because you want to be a motor mechanic?
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to be a motor mechanic since third year at school. And then I followed up on the 2-year course. and next I'll have to see what happens after that.
So you actually did a 2-year course
Yeah.
while you were at school?
So I know all the basics and that, but it's you know, like finish it off and that. So then when I can go for a job afterwards, it's like I've been a year's training I can put down.
Did you actually try and get a job when you left school?
Oh yeah, I tried, yeah. I went for a couple of places and they turned me down on the maths because I know all the mechanic stuff. So if I come in and I can improve on my maths over the year and just get the mechanics done.
And do you think at the end of the year you will stand a good chance of getting a job?
A better chance than I've got now, anyway.
So these are the kinds of scheme on offer. But what exactly do you get when you join a youth training scheme? Well, to begin with, you get paid. Most people get about £26 a week. A few, the lucky ones, get that figure topped up by an employer. Now, of course, you'll have to pay bus fares and things like that, but you should end up with more than you get on the dole. Well, just about, anyway.
And then there's the training. If you're lucky enough to get on a good scheme, you'll get a valuable set of skills. And apart from the work experience, you'll also get a certificate as well. It's quite a long document outlining exactly what you've done. In a sense, it's the proof that you've had a year's experience, and it's just the kind of thing an employer will want to see. Mark Baptiste got a certificate. He needed one. At 16, he was an apprentice footballer with Arsenal, but it all fell through, so he decided to join the YTS.
My impressions at first were that it was going to be more of a classroom-like atmosphere whereby you spend most of the time in a classroom with the one teacher, more or less the same as sport. Yeah.
But in fact, you were doing, as it were, real work for some 4 days a week.
There's a lot more real work than I first anticipated, yeah.
And was that a good thing, do you think?
I think so, yeah, very much, yeah.
What would you say was the most important thing that you actually managed to get out of the YTS scheme?
I think the most thing anyone can get out of it is a lot of experience. It's the most important thing is experience.
And of course, as far as you were concerned, I mean, it also led to a job as well.
That's right, and I work in Stuart Wrightson.
But it's clear that many unemployed youngsters think they're better off on the dole rather than on the YTS. They see the need for improvements in youth training. And even the people who run the YTS say they've had to improve 1/3 of all their courses.
I wanted to be doing joinery and building. I did joinery for 2 weeks, and then rest of the time we're building. And then just before I left, I did about a week and a half of plumbing, and that were just basics.
Well, I went on a catering youth training scheme, and lasted 2 weeks working.
Why was that?
Well, the first placement I had, I was moving bricks about, knocking a wall down, a brick wall down. Then I was told that, you know, if I didn't do that, then I'd find something equally as nasty for me to do about 2:30 each afternoon he'd come round.
Well, a lot of my friends have been on, you know, and for £25 a week, you know, say you're not treated all that well and it's a lot of hard work, but if there's nothing else going, I suppose I'll have to.
The catering was just basic cooking fried eggs and beans on toast. Nothing that you could actually get a decent job with.
Unless there is a job at the end of it, I can understand a lot of young people drawing the conclusion, what's the point? It's hard work, learning. We might as well recognise that there's going to be no jobs at the end of it. The training is for just to get us off the streets, basically, to try and stop us rioting or acting in other negative ways. So yes, you can actually stop at home, but we believe that the youth training scheme gives opportunity, and linked with the fight for jobs and linked with the fight to maintain wages, you know, they can actually be drawn into that struggle, and a positive future is there for the taking.
So you don't think YTS is a false hope?
I do not believe that YTS is a false hope.
At the beginning of 1984, 110,000 youngsters who were eligible for YTS were still on the dole. Doesn't the Manpower Services Commission think they were consciously rejecting YTS?
Well, it's a voluntary scheme. People are not kept in against their will. Without a shadow of doubt, some had, to use your word, rejected or come off the scheme. But that is their view. But certainly, I don't think that adds up to saying that 110,000 had consciously rejected YTS. Perhaps the more significant figure is that the government asked us to make sure that any 16-year-old school leaver from last year was given a 12-month training place or the opportunity of it by last Christmas. Well, bar about 2,000 over the whole country, we made that. And that indicated that at that point in time, things were going very well indeed. What we have here is not necessarily every scheme here and now, but the basis of a high-quality 12-month training scheme, which can be a springboard, if you like, for people moving on to further education, more training, jobs, or whatever. And one most certainly, which does its best to help any 16, and hopefully in the future any 17-year-old, cross that bridge from the world of school to the world of work.
You can argue about the political pros and cons of the youth training scheme from now until Christmas. But the one thing everyone wants to know is, will it help me to get a job? Well, the simple answer is that none of these schemes actually guarantee you a job. And after a year on the YTS, 1 out of every 2 people remains unemployed.
And it's going to be my job over the next year to test the idea.
But it's worth remembering that many firms recruit their permanent staff from youth trainees. And if you're lucky enough to get on a good training scheme, your chances of a job at the end of it are much higher.
My pilot scheme, which we ran for YTS, we finished up, I think, employing about 47% of the trainees within the organisation. And we placed another 45% or more outside the organisation in jobs with other companies. But I'm not unmindful of the fact that there are going to be a proportion of trainees who, although they're on good schemes, and I know 1 or 2 very good schemes, at the end they're not going to be able to say to their trainees, here's a job. But we mustn't forget that some schemes have to judge their success on how well they prepared trainees for a life of unemployment.
Community-based schemes are not run like businesses, so at the end of the year they can't offer trainees a job, but they can help in other ways.
What we do here is a range of things. Because there's no profit at the end of the day, we give the trainees the confidence, and indeed, just looking at the schemes under threat in Lambeth, we have an overall placement rate into jobs or proper apprenticeships of something like 75%. I mean, it varies up and down a little, but not very much.
But at the end of the day, is the YTS worth the effort? Does it really bridge the gap between school and work? Or are school leavers the latest laboratory mice in another grand government experiment?
Well, on the whole, YTS does tend to encourage an old-fashioned Christian work ethic and spends far too much effort training people to work in dying industries rather than helping them to make more of their leisure time, for example. So, a revolution in training, it certainly isn't. But the YTS can help you in other ways. At worst, it's a stopgap solution to unemployment. At best, it can help you to face the future with confidence and to expect more from life. A generation that's taught to expect less will never demand more.
It is cheap labour, but really there's 2 sides to it, because you're getting experience, whereas on the dole you're not, you're just sitting indoors doing nothing.
It's not as boring and dull as people think it is. Plus, they've got to be prepared to try and live on the money.
It can be very beneficial to people, but it is a question of picking the scheme and picking the right one.